Let me ask you something. Do you hate Americans with black skin color?
Absolutely not. I actually love Americans with black skin color so much that I'm willing to fall on the sword 1,000 times for them to wake up and realize that we are being lied to, abused, and used by the Democrat Party.
The left believes that black people and Hispanic people are stupid. That is the truth. They believe that we are stupid. That is why they overuse the word racism at every turn. This is the politicking of fear. It has worked in the past and is no longer working, and they are frantic. And so they keep using more aggressive terminology, white supremacy, white nationalism, hoping that they can strap us in using fear.
I'm calling it now. The black community, which has been politically irrelevant for decades, will become the most politically relevant voting group by 2020. Our awakening is finally happening. Candace Owens, author of that tweet. Explain the tweet. And how can you say that black voters have been politically irrelevant for decades?
Right, so politically irrelevant because if you consistently vote for just one party, then you're not going to see people competing for your votes, and that's what we have seen happen. So I feel that on the Republican side, they weren't doing anything because they saw it as a monolith, and they weren't trying to win over black voters. On the Democratic side, they were able to present us with a bunch of broken promises.
We've sort of watched this conversation happen, and rather than people wanting to have an intellectual discourse, why is America voting Trump, we see the media sort of spin everything and say, well, it's because America's just having a rise of racism and white nationalism all over again. And similarly, we see the exact same thing happening overseas. But if you actually are a black American, that's basically letting people mine your history and your past pain so that they can sling mud at other people. And I felt that that was something that was actually harming black America. The discussions were no longer realistic.
They create this narrative every 4 years that the Republicans are racist. They try to scare us. Are we such punks that we are so scared to try something different because every 4 years they knock for our votes and they say, vote for us because the other guy's racist. Vote for us because the other person is racist. It is time for us to stand up for our community boldly, to look the Democrat Party in the eye and to tell them that you are going to fight for our votes.
You're a very popular, what I would call conservative thinker.
Yeah.
But you're very young.
I am.
Like, how did this all happen? How did you become this Fox News personality, conservative thinker?
Yeah, I mean, I just launched a YouTube channel and
Oh, fucking YouTube.
yeah, YouTube where magic happens. YouTube's a strange place.
It's as strange as it gets.
All right, guys, we're live on the YouTube, and joining me today is a YouTuber who has done pretty much the scariest thing that one person can do. She has come out as conservative.
Mom, Dad, I'm a lesbian. I like girls. Oh, sweetheart. We always knew. The bottom line, we just want our children to be happy, and we love you regardless. Brave soul. Oh, thank you guys. Oh, also, I think I might be a conservative.
So for those who don't know, the arc is you did this great video about coming out as a conservative, playing your parents and so on, which was just hilarious. We'll put a link to it below. And you were just starting out, you know, a YouTuber with a dream. And how's it playing out for you?
It's been much crazier than I could have ever anticipated. I'm so grateful and humbled by the experience.
I uploaded my first YouTube video, which was called Mom, Dad, I'm a Conservative. What happened next, I could have never predicted. My third video got 26 million views worldwide. It was me attacking the narrative that CNN was trying to sell to me after, which I'm sure you guys remember here in Virginia, the Charlottesville debacle.
If you are a black person and you express some irrational fears this week over the rise of the Klansmen and neo-Nazis, let me invite you over for a cup of hot steaming facts.
So I stopped with the skits and I opened my laptop and I ranted for 4 minutes about how ridiculous it is that they were trying to make me believe that I live in the 1940s.
I mean, there are what, 6,000 Klansmen left in our nation? You want me to actually process that as a legitimate fear every day when I wake up?
The KKK was alive and well. That a real fear that I have to have walking down the street is that a guy on horseback in a white hood is gonna come.
It's Donald Trump's fault that they're feeling energized. It's Obama's fault that Black Lives Matter is violent.
Both of you children, to your room. It's obviously the media's fault. I mean, the media is creating this entire narrative, and it is crazy.
Am I the only person that, relies on their own experience to dictate what might be going on in the world? Am I the only person that can get up in the morning and go to Starbucks and a white person makes me my latte and they say, have a nice day? And then I go to the gym and I've got a Spanish guy who hands me my towel and he says, have a nice day. I'm living in a pretty okay place until I turn on CNN, right?
So you put the videos on. Were you shocked how quickly they
Absolutely
blew up?
shocked. Absolutely shocked. And more than it blowing up here, I was shocked to see that they were dubbing these videos. I have like a French base of, I have like people in France are dubbing all of my videos in French so that people can understand them. People in Brazil are dubbing them in Portuguese. So I was talking about something that I thought was sort of unique to America.
Yeah.
But I'm realizing that I've hit an international nerve when I talk about the media and how the media, affects our psychology. So that was something that I wasn't expecting at all whatsoever.
Yeah. This is why we keep fighting, right? People say, how do you get up out of bed and take the hits that you take? I mean, I've been accused, literally, I woke up one morning and I was accused of a mosque shooting in New Zealand. Did you guys follow that?
I just have to say that I object strenuously to your use of the word hilarious. To me, this feels a lot like your reaction to being named in one of these manifestos. Now, you're of course not responsible for the words of somebody writing that document, but I do think that laughing at it is a real problem.
I believe, Ms. Owens, when you used the word hilarious, it was referencing the fact that no one had asked you a question. It wasn't to the subject matter of the hearing. Is that right?
I said it's hilarious that we are sitting in this room today and I've got 2 doctors and a missus and nobody can give us real numbers that we can respond to so we can assess how big of a threat this is. Because you know that it is not as big of a threat as you are trying to make it out to be so that you can manipulate. And the audacity of you to bring up the Christchurch shooting manifesto and make it seem as if I laughed at people that were slaughtered by a homicidal maniac is, in my opinion, absolutely despicable. And I think that we should be above that. To try to assign reality or any meaning to a homicidal maniac writing a manifesto, which, by the way, let the record show, also stated Spyro the Dragon, the child's cartoon, as a source of inspiration. He also cited Nelson Mandela as a source of information. I don't think that Nelson Mandela has inspired mosque shootings. You can correct me if you think I'm wrong. You would rather assign meaning to a homicidal maniac than to actually address the things that I said today that are actually harming Black America. Number 1, father absence. Number 2, the education system and the illiteracy rate. Illegal immigration ranks high, abortion ranks high, white supremacy and white nationalism, if I had to make a list again of 100 things, would not be on it. This hearing, in my opinion, is a farce, and it is ironic that you're sitting here and you're having 3 Caucasian people testify and tell you what their expertise are. Do I know what my expertise are? Black in America. I've been Black in America my whole life, all 30 years, and I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
I mean, the stupidity that it takes to come up with something like Black white supremacy. Oh yes, please, I would like to help create a society that I can't live in. That would be the logic. I get up on every stage and I say, please, please, please oppress me. That would be the logic. And yet we have pockets of people that fall for it. We have pockets of people that are still believing the media lies.
I'd like to just start at the start and go back with you, Candace. So you're born where and what kind of family system?
I was born in White Plains, New York, and raised in Stamford, Connecticut. And my immediate family was very poor. So me and my sisters lived in a tiny little apartment with my brother and my parents. So 6 of us, the 3 of us shared a bedroom.
About the time that I was 8 years old, my grandfather decided, he came to our apartment and he said, I really don't want my grandbabies to live in this sort of a situation. And he moved us into his very middle class house. Now, my grandfather is a very, very, very pious man. Living in his home meant that every single morning, I was meant to read the Bible. He would pick a scripture, and me and my brothers and sisters would sit around the table, and he would ask us questions, and based on our understanding of the scriptures and the Bible, we would be awarded different hot chocolate mugs in the morning. My grandfather raised me to be extremely conservative. I did not point that conservatism to a political ideology, so at the same time that I was learning leftist ideology in school, everything that my grandfather did in his life was conservative.
He seems like such a great man, and the way he handled you kids was amazing to me. You know, he didn't fuss at you or jump on you. He would maybe just ignore you for a while like you didn't exist.
Yes.
If you didn't speak properly or act properly.
That's right. So he did this simple thing in the morning. If we came down and we were super tired for breakfast and forgot to say good morning, he would just sit down. Everybody else would get a plate, and whoever didn't say good morning, we wouldn't get a plate. So we'd be groggy, and we'd be looking around the table at everybody else's food and go, why didn't I get it? And then you'd remember that you didn't say good morning. And then you go, oh, Granddad, good morning. And he'd go, hi, baby. I didn't see you there. I'm honored to be here today in front of you all because the person sitting behind me is my 75-year-old grandfather. I've always considered myself to be my grandfather's child, and I mean to say that my sense of humor, my passion, and my work ethic all comes from the man that is sitting behind me. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm in the segregated South. He grew up in an America where words like racism and white nationalism held real meaning under the Democrat Party's Jim Crow laws. My grandfather's first job was given to him at the age of 5 years old, and his job was to lay tobacco out to dry in an attic in the South. My grandfather has picked cotton, and he has also had experiences with a Democrat terrorist organization of that time, the Ku Klux Klan. They would regularly visit his home and they would shoot bullets into it. They had an issue with his father, my great-grandfather. During my formative years, I had the privilege of growing up in my grandfather's home. It's going to shock the committee, but not once, not in a single breath of a conversation did my grandfather tell me that I could not do something because of my skin color. Not once did my grandfather hold a gripe against the white man. I was simply never taught to view myself as a victim because of my heritage. The worst thing that they've done to the Black community is they've stripped away our sense of self-confidence.
Yes.
And there was a sense of self-confidence. You know, I speak about my grandfather all the time growing up on a sharecropping farm, and he did it, man. Like, he did it from start to finish. He grew up in a segregated
with what he did.
South.
Your PragerU video talked about
Right.
it. Yes.
He never talked about racism. He never said I can't do something because I'm Black. He never said that society was stopping him. He just kept his head down and he worked his entire life, and he had conservative principles. He married my grandmother. He stayed married to her until her dying day in 2013. And that was the example that I had in my life. And now we have these kids who have lived through nothing.
No, they have no adversity whatsoever.
They can't do anything. Of course not. My skin's Black. I'm a woman. I'm gay. I'm lesbian. I'm trans. I can't do anything in this society. And the left has programmed them with all of these excuses. And it's actually those excuses that are cancerous to their progress.
That's right.
And my whole thing is, hey, if you're Black, I believe in you. Yes. We can do it without government handouts. This is why we need to embrace conservative principles. This is how liberal principles and policies have failed us in the past 6 years. I believe in you. We can do this as a community. Black America, I believe in you. I believe in us. Hey, Hispanic America, Minority America, Asian America, I believe in you. I believe in us. That's it. That message is considered dangerous.
One of the themes that you focus in a lot in Blackout is the theme that victimhood and speaking about victimhood and believing yourself to be a victim is actually extraordinarily crippling. You have some personal stories about your sort of realization that wallowing in victimhood was a terrible idea and actually crippling for your future. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if people in the political sphere know this, but when I was in high school, I went through what was classified as a hate crime.
In high school, I had a very unique experience happen to me, which reporters and journalists do not like to report on because it completely disrupts their narrative that I don't understand that bad things happen to Black people, that I don't understand that there's racism in the world and that people can be hurt by racism.
The exact situation that what you went through, I went through with my daughter Tiana in New Jersey. We actually found the kids. They did it on the internet. They were, bullying her, harassing her, putting pictures of caskets and guns. We gonna kill your daughter, whatever. And we went and found them. And it got settled with the police or whatever, but we found the kids. What was the story with you? What happened? What took place?
What happened was I received some voicemail messages from about 4 kids, and the language was pretty strong. It was like, we're gonna tar and feather your family, we're gonna put a bullet in the back of your head like we did to Martin Luther King, N-word, 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 dirty N-word,
horrible,
tar and feather, that dirty N-word.
Bloody
we're
hell,
gonna
mate.
put a bullet in the back of your head like we did to Martin Luther King, right? Terrible stuff.
They brought up an icon.
Right, a lot. So I went to bed the next morning. I had a philosophy class, and we happened to be talking about racism. And I told my teacher, I rose my hand and I told him what happened. I said, Mr. Forker, I got these terrible messages. And I played them for him. And he was so horrified that he said, get up right now. We're going to go to the principal and you're going to report these messages. One of those 3 people in the car that night that left me those messages happened to be the current Democratic governor of Connecticut's son. And instantly, this case was elevated, and my face, a high school senior, was splashed on the front pages of every newspaper in Connecticut and in New York, calling me a victim. These kids were labeled racist, I was labeled a victim. How did that turn out for me? Well, for me, it turned out into 4.5 years of anorexia.
Because of that one call,
Yeah.
those 4
And I was
calls.
the victim. Yeah, and
wow.
yeah.
You went through anorexia.
Yeah, and just nobody really thought that, like, you actually ruined all of our lives, right? Like, for a little bit. Like, these kids went on to have, like, DUIs and get arrested and got into drugs, and it was because of this
the
outrage.
Pressure of everything that happened.
Yeah, and I was like, would have been totally cool with an apology. I was angry with God because I had this horrific situation happen in high school, and I was a victim, and he allowed that to happen to me. That was my mentality. And all of a sudden, I had a different perspective, and this perspective changed my life. And it's what I try to tell everybody that is going through something bad. Bad things happen to everyone, but a victim mentality is not something that you should possess because a bad thing happens to you. When I accepted this victim narrative, I suffered with anorexia for 4 years. I was absolutely miserable. I was a mean person. I wasn't happy, right? But when I suddenly had my aha moment and realized I was a child and a narrative was taken from me, not only from me, but from these kids, and people didn't know what had happened. They just loved the race thing. I realized that, wow, this is completely toxic, and it transformed my life. And it wasn't the way my grandparents raised me. They never raised me to see myself as a victim. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm, picking cotton and laying out tobacco to dry when he was 5 years old. He's never once complained, never once told me I can't do something because of the color of my skin. I think it's insulting to his legacy for me to live in this America, to run around saying that I'm a victim.
I will not pretend to be a victim in this country. I know that makes many people on the left uncomfortable. I want to talk about real issues in Black America. I want to talk about real issues in this country and real concerns. The hearing today is not about white nationalism or hate crimes. It's about fear-mongering, power, and control. It's a preview of a Democrat 2020 election strategy, same as the Democrat 2016 election strategy.
When people know what you fear, they can control you. And the left has figured out that minorities fear racism.
They need blacks to hate whites, the rich to hate the poor, and soon enough, it'll be the tall hating the short.
What is the negotiation tactics so that we're not acquiescing to somebody else's agenda, but being clear about ours in the process of giving them our support?
Well, I would say the first thing is that it's important to identify what our agenda actually is. And I think that the most important thing for people in this room to understand is that there is a very small window. Right now, the black vote is the most important vote in the country. There's a very small window before our vote's not going to matter. Right now, our vote means a lot, but new births of Black Americans have stagnated. The population growth within Black America has stagnated. So the things that I pay attention to are the numbers. I pay attention to the birth rates in this country, which is why I'm pro putting something down to stop illegal immigration.
You build that wall.
Well,
build
yeah, so,
that wall.
okay, so
build
first
that
off, the
wall.
chant's just hilarious, so it's fun, you just jump in it, you know? But so the number one thing, so my whole shtick, the only time I snap back or get upset is because I'm really focused on the Black community, dude, and the community that has been affected the most by illegal immigration is the Black community. It's just a fact. I mean, you talk about low-wage workers, the people that are the most unemployed in this company are young Black men between the ages of 18 and 21, right? So they have been negatively impacted by the influx of people running over the border, because they'll come here and they'll say, okay, well, you were going to pay this guy $7, you know, whatever the minimum wage is, we'll do it for less.
and that directly impacts the black labor force.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the critiques that's been made of your take on black America. So you've used language before where you've suggested that people need to get off the ideological plantation, for example. Are you suggesting that people aren't freely choosing what it is that they've chosen politically, or do you really believe that it's really not a question of agency, it's a question of misinformation?
Yeah, it's a question of misinformation, and people always get me wrong. They think that I say things to be theatrical when I say the Democratic plantation. And people go, oh, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't liken it to slavery. No, actually, if you sit down and you study the model of American slavery, and I say Democrat plantation because at the starting point of the Civil War, all Democrats had slaves. There were no Republicans that held a slave, that owned a slave. And when you look at the model of it, right, what was necessary? Illiteracy. Black Americans were not allowed to learn how to read. Look across America today.
75% of black boys in California can't pass a reading exam. Across Baltimore, they looked at 5 schools. They couldn't find a single black boy that was a single black child that could pass a basic reading or a math exam. So I caught a lot of slack because I said, this is the Democrat plantation, but I meant what I said. If you look historically at what the plantations were when we were slaves, there were 3 things that were necessary for them to run. The first was our ignorance. Black Americans were not allowed to learn how to read unless we would have our limbs chopped off. And that was because an educated mind cannot be enslaved. So the fact that our schools are in this condition in the inner cities and all throughout America and not a single candidate is talking about it is problematic to me.
When we have statistics like 75% of black boys in California can't pass a reading exam, we should all be terrified because that was this same sorts of things when we look at the times of slavery, when slaves weren't allowed to read. It becomes very dangerous because it allows for other people with more nefarious goals to go out and create your reality for you. And that's what I think we're seeing today. What are your teachers telling you? Well, teachers are telling you that Republicans and Democrats switched, and it was called the Southern Strategy, and suddenly they said, ooh, let's go on this side, and I'll go on the other side. We're learning that. We're actively learning our history wrong in school. That creates an uphill battle for people like you and me.
That's what I learned. I never learned about how the Republicans as a percentage more than voted for the Civil Rights Act of '64 than Democrats did. I didn't know that Democrats opposed the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know Democrats founded the Klan. I didn't know that until I got a lot older.
Same for me. I didn't learn it until these last 3 years. I didn't learn it until these last 3 years. I went through an entire education system and I did not learn that. It is a revisionist history.
Another component, and this is the biggest issue that I think is facing Black America today, which was important to maintaining the plantations, was the breakdown of family. The biggest issue facing Black America is father absence.
Barack Obama spoke about this. He gave a Father's Day speech, and he started talking about all the statistics of what happens when you remove a father from the home. One simple thing, remove a father from the home, and a child is 12 times more likely to end up in prison, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 6 times more likely to lead a life of poverty, right? One single element. And there are actually policies that since the 1960s have incentivized that for Black America. That's when everything fell apart for Black Americans. Our families were together, kids were performing better. I mean, in every statistic, Black Americans were doing better. Think about this, under Jim Crow laws, right, than they are doing today.
We have children that are growing up without their fathers in the home, and that is being incentivized by the government right now via the welfare system. When the government says we'll give you more money if you don't marry the father of your children, you are incentivizing bad behavior in our community.
Definitely at the beginning of university, and I had sort of developed this feminist perspective. I mean, I was forced to take a Feminism 101 class, and it was considered sort of cultural and, I guess, cool and relevant to be one of those girls that's like, I don't need a man, I'm never gonna get married. I remember having a girlfriend who said, you know, whoever marries me better know that I'm not gonna be cooking and cleaning, and he better be doing that. And this perspective that we see this sort of narrative and this perspective being fed to us constantly as some sort of movement towards freedom.
What does radical feminism, the transgender movement, and welfare benefits and believing in socialism all have in common? And it's an attack on the nuclear family. Exactly. And in order for a government to grow, it needs to destabilize the family, and Karl Marx believed in this. He was against the nuclear family, He was against family.
And we see every single day how much the left hates the idea of a nuclear family, of a mom and a dad and their family. They want that gone. They are trying to manufacture that crisis in every single regard. You see today, they want men to act like women, right? You in your feminism shirts, feminism is for everybody, right? They want women to act like men. You don't need a man. What does feminism tell us today? Just hate men. Masculinity is toxic. This is why I do not mess with feminism at all. I'm not with it. This breakdown and mocking masculinity, making it seem like there's something wrong to be a man, all of this contributes to the breakdown of family.
Were any of the ideas or stances that you have today taught in your household when you were living with your grandmother and grandfather?
Yes and no. So I would say my household was apolitical. So there was no talk about politics. I don't think, I mean, my father says he did. My father says he's voted, but I don't think my mother has ever voted. It just was not happening in our household. There was no conversation about left or right. I mean, just like normal Black American, I grew up thinking I have to be a Democrat, I have to be a liberal, Republicans are racist, conservatives, but I didn't learn that even in my household. I learned that really in school, sort of in this like history revisionist thing. I would say in terms of conservatism though, definitely my grandparents were conservative. They wouldn't have called it conservatism. You know, they were just, everything was by the book. You know, it was like family, faith, hard work, no excuses. Like they just did not play around with any of that stuff.
So first question I think that people want to know, Candace, are you a Republican?
I'm a registered Republican. For the first time, I registered after the Brett Kavanaugh hearings.
Okay.
But I don't consider myself to be a Republican.
Okay.
I say a Trumplican because if John McCain was alive and running, I would not be voting for John McCain.
Mm-hmm.
If Paul Ryan ran in 2024, I would not be voting for Paul Ryan. If now Killer Mike ran, I love Killer Mike.
Yeah.
He's a liberal. You know, he's a good friend of mine, and he's a great person. So it depends on. I really go for the person, and right now I like Trump. So I don't want people to go, oh, Candace is destroying the left, and she wants to create a monolith on the right. No, wrong. All I want Black people to do is understand you have a right to like certain ideas on both sides, but you don't like. What you should never allow is for someone to use your identity to define how you have to think. You should always be the person defining how you think.
I'm baffled because in the chairman's opening statement, he said that you openly associate with purveyors of hate.
Yes, purveyors of hate by his definition is anybody that supports the president. I support the president because he's done a tremendous job in helping the Black community, despite all of the rhetoric from the media and leftists, which do not want him to be successful.
Tell me a little bit about how the president has helped the Black community, if you would, please.
Well, he's lowered the Black unemployment rate. It's the lowest it's ever been in the history. He's getting us off of our feet. We see, I believe the last number I checked was 3.5 million people are off of food stamps, something that the Black caucus sat down and didn't applaud. Neither did any of the Democrats applaud, because they want a system where Blacks are dependent on the government. They are the people that put in place the policies that broke down the Black family, and the biggest problem that's facing our community is father absence. In every room that I've been in with the president, he talks about real issues, and he doesn't pander to us. He doesn't do Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Southern drawl accent and speaking to us like we're slaves. He asks us important questions, and the most important question he could have asked was, Black America, what do you have to lose? Because we were already losing under Democrat leadership.
If you don't believe in the Democrat Party, how can you believe in the Republican Party when the difference is negligible?
When have anybody ever heard me say vote Republican?
I don't know. I actually don't care.
Okay, so I vote based on the candidate, and the only candidate that I believe in is Donald Trump. And let me tell you, he's neither Republican or Democrat, which was so interesting to watch you on The View. Let me tell you why. Because you understand the problem with the establishment. But what you didn't realize was that Trump was anti-establishment. Because, and you know why? You get fooled by wealth. You think wealth automatically makes you establishment. It doesn't. Obviously, he's not establishment, or he wouldn't have the entire mainstream media and two parties that were opposing him. He was the antithesis of all of that. And he came and he slammed all of it, and he won. So I'm a Trump supporter. And people call that Trumplicans, like, you know, a portion of the Republican Party, because he had to run on either one ticket or the other. He ran as a Republican. Trump is by no means. He calls it the swamp for a reason. I started paying attention in politics when Donald Trump came down the escalator, and which is quite hilariously because I thought this man should never be the president of the United States ever, right? So I don't care where you were in America. I mean, I was on your side with this. Like, no, not this guy. I thought that he was just too boisterous, too New York, and also he was the guy who says you're fired, like too cultural to be the president of the United States. I didn't believe that he was the right person for the job, especially coming off of Obama, the smooth talker. But then something weird started happening where this guy who I thought should not be the president of the United States, rather than saying he shouldn't be the president of the United States because he's not qualified, the media started saying he shouldn't be the president of the United States because he's a racist, a sexist, a homophobe. And I'm thinking, wait a second, this guy has been loved, you know, in the media. They loved this guy.
Trump was at the parties, Trump was hanging out with Diddy, he was in music, Beyonce and Jay-Z wanted to be sitting poolside at Mar-a-Lago. So you have to take me for an absolute fool if you're gonna tell me that you just found out today when he announced he was running for president that this man was literally Hitler and wants to send black people back on slaves. So first off, I'm just not that stupid. I'm not that emotionally, I'm just not emotional silly party like that. Fine, if you want to if the media had stuck with the line of like, he is not qualified, they would have had me.
So I asked myself an important question, and that question was, is it plausible that Black Americans are now and racism is being used as a theme to turn Black Americans into single issue voters? And the answer is yes.
And so, I got conservative curious, as I call it, and started being like, okay, well, all those people that I used to call Uncle Toms and Coons, have I ever actually listened to what they said? Have I ever actually sat through and watched an interview what they said, or do I only read headlines about what they've said? And it's obviously the irony here is that now this is what's done to me. So all those years of me calling all those people Uncle Toms and Coons, I get to have it back times 3,000.
But is there any element, do you think he's fully telling the truth all the time?
I mean, I don't know if everything he says is the truth. I'm pretty confident that he would know better than to lie when everybody's waiting for him to lie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He couldn't have more hitmen waiting to take him down. It'd be a really bad time to tell a lie that, is researchable.
Well, he's really good about saying something that's not quite true, and then everyone goes crazy, and then there's a grain of truth in it, so then everyone's like, see, it was kind of true.
Right, and I love that he tweets, because you have to understand that's the only way that he can get the truth out, and that's true. No matter what he says, they spin it. No matter how he says it, they spin it. We saw that with the Charlottesville thing. What he said was factually accurate.
What he said was that there was good
No,
on both
let me
sides
finish.
of white
Stop,
supremacy. That's
because
what
you
he
guys
said.
are so
That's
hung
not what he
up
said.
on
That's not what
Charlottesville,
he said.
and nobody heard the entire clip. I want to talk about why we get manipulated. I'm being serious, guys. I'm not even trying to make this like a contentious moment, because this is literally why Black America loses right here. Because we allow people with cameras to go hear a whole speech, like they do this to me all the time. They take out a couple of sentences you said, and they create a whole new headline, and people that were not there get incensed and get emotional and don't actually go back to hear what was actually said in full context. They do it to me all the time. I know they do it to Trump. He has denounced white supremacy so many times. He said America is no place for white nationalism and white supremacy, and it's an issue that has to be tackled.
To anyone who acted criminally in this weekend's racist violence, you will be held fully accountable. Justice will be delivered. As I said on Saturday, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence. It has no place in America. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans.
The first thing he said was that
Tamika, you're asking a different question than T.I. did. T.I. said, how can you work with an administration that has never denounced white supremacy? You're talking about Charlottesville?
I'm talking about talking points that come out later. But what he starts with is racism. That's what comes out his mouth when he starts.
See?
We
and let me tell you something.
How many mass shootings by white supremacists
and let me tell you why the black vote is the easiest vote for Democrats to keep for the last 60 years. All they have to do to get our vote, let me tell you something. If people know what you fear, you are the easiest person to control. The Democrats have figured out that Black America is emotionally responsive to the word racism. She says racism, you jump up and you start cheering. You haven't even listened to what I've said to rebut it, okay?
Cheer. But it's the
100%. The biggest issue. Let me finish. When Trump said there were good people on both sides, he was talking about the fact that some people that were in the Charlottesville rally, and he could have paraphrased that better, he could have said something better, literally came there because they don't believe that statues should be torn down. Okay? Other people came there because they were upset that amongst the people that came there to watch the statue be torn down were also white nationalists.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
I'm not trying to defend him or relitigate a situation. I'm saying that being hung up on that is allowing you to not look at an administration that is tackling so many issues in Black America right now. I do not consider myself a Republican. I definitely am not a Democrat, but Trump woke me up. I used to be liberal. Trump woke me up to the idea that we're being manipulated by the word racism every 4 years.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
It is wild that that rumor is still out there when this dude literally said there were good people that showed up that day on both sides to talk about the statue. And he specifically says that I'm not talking about the white supremacists or the Nazis or any of those people. He was talking about people that did not want to see the statue come down. And the media said that he turned into, he defended white supremacists and Nazis. So they were doing this to him over and over again. So I was like, I just instantly stopped trusting the media. And the fake news thing became real. You know, I'm just like, I've seen it with my own eyes. I saw what he said. They changed it. And now I'm in a unique position because the media lies on me all the time. They'll say, I never said it. People will be like, listen to this. I'm like, find the clip. Find the clip. They can't find it. Like, one of the most infamous Candace Owens quotes I've never said is, racism doesn't exist. That quote does not exist. I never said it. The root made that quote up. So the way they do it is they'll put in parentheses what I actually said and then add something to it. Like that's their sentence, and people just buy into it.
What did you say? Because you know, I wrote down a list of what I called your quote unquote greatest hits that people would be incensed about or were controversial, and that was
like
one
if you were doing a mixtape.
Yeah, exactly. Like I got a playlist of all the stuff that I want to go to. So what did you say? What was it that you said that they took out of context?
It is such a good speech, and everyone should go watch it. I said it at CPAC, not this year, 2019, right? The words racism never exists never came out of my mouth. I said, I have never been a slave in this country. Right? And Root took that quote, what I actually said, Candace Owens says, in quotations, she has never been a slave, end quote, therefore racism doesn't exist. That was just some writer added that. I said, I've never been a slave in this country. And I said, I'm not going to start being one today.
Okay, so my question is to you. Do you believe racism exists in this country?
I know racism exists. And not only do I say racism exists, I remind people that it's undefeatable. It's never going to go away, right? So if the second you get yourself on the program that we're going to get rid of racism, you're foolish. You are the easiest person to be hooked. That's a scam. I mean, you are selling salt to a slug. Nobody can get rid of racism. You want to know why? Because at the root of racism is hate and ignorance, and hate and ignorance is a condition of humanity.
Really excited about my guest today, who was the president, now is the chairman of Black Lives Matter in the New York chapter. And it is the most necessary conversation to have. Hawk Newsome, welcome to the Candace Owens Show.
Thanks for having me, sister.
Have you ever sat across from literally Hitler?
I am now.
Right. There's a first time. There's a first time for everything.
Yeah.
So here's what I disagree with you on. I actually, because I've done so much studying the numbers, I disagree with the idea that there's police brutality that is disproportionately affecting Black Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with you on the fact that Black Americans are disproportionately being locked up.
Mm-hmm.
But what I disagree with you on is the reason why. It's nothing to do with, in my opinion, because we're Black. Like, we're not. There's no sentence that you get 20 years because you're Black, but there is economic privilege in this country. And if you're rich and you can get a great lawyer and you can get off, then great.
You have to look at the institution of policing. The institution of policing is racist, right? Since the Fugitive Slave Act, since they were capturing runaway slaves and bringing them back in. I've had Black police officers tell me, I'm not Black, I'm blue. Wait until you take that uniform off and you'll get shot down like any other Black person.
White men and Hispanic men are being shot down at a higher rate, not more of them, a higher rate than Black men, okay? So unless there's a Hispanic Lives Matter, so that means to me, and the timing of it is always suspicious, when all of a sudden we're supposed to be in the street protesting, it's right before election cycles, they release some information and Black people are supposed to be outraged. Our community is too emotional, point blank, period. We have to start to be rational and say, Now, I know that right now is election cycle, and every single night on CNN, they're showing me images of Black men dying. Why would that be? Why is it that after Trump won, those images magically went away? Nobody cared about Black Lives Matter movement. I can't find CNN doing all the specials. It was like every day, prime time was a Black Lives Matter thing. Trump won, they were like, all right, bye.
Post-election Donald Trump, I have contacts at CNN I had a video of a man named Andrew Kearse who was placed in the back of a police car and said, "I can't breathe," 70 times in 17 minutes. And that cop cracked jokes like, if you want to breathe, maybe you shouldn't run from the police. Or it's really hot back. Could you imagine the last 17 minutes of your life, you're begging someone for air?
No, it's horrible.
And they're laughing at you, and they let that man die. I went to CNN. You'll love this. The Attorney General wouldn't let me in to the meeting because I'm an activist, and they know my style. So I had his wife record the footage that they let her see in confidentiality. She brought me back the recording. And I said, hey, these people are playing games. They're not going to go after this cop and seek an indictment. I'm going to release this tape. I called CNN. You know, Trump's doing so much. They care more about Trump than they do about Black Lives Matter. My sister, you are right.
I always make the comment that there is not enough discussion between Black conservatives and Black liberals. For whatever reason, I invite so many Black liberals on to my show, and despite their willingness to tweet at me, to tweet about me, to write articles about me, they never take me up on that offer, which always leads me to the question, do they actually believe what they believe? You see, I'll go into any room and defend my positions because I actually think what I say that I believe is true. I'm very excited that one person I instantly messaged on Twitter and he said, yes, let's do it. Come on, I'll come right on the show. Mark Lamont Hill. Mark Lamont is a professor, a tenured professor at Temple University. He teaches media studies. Mark Lamont Hill, welcome to the Candace Owens Show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited.
This is going to be
hear.
interesting.
It is. So let's get right into, obviously, the hot topic of today, which was the killing of George Floyd, the protests that have ensued all across the country because of that, and my comments, which seem to have shocked the world. I want to come out and say that I do not support George Floyd and the media depiction of him as a martyr for Black America. I'm going to explain why, and I hope that some of you guys will understand where I'm coming from. I recently came across something that was an idea that was planted into my head. Shelby Steele said that the Black community is unique from other communities because we are the only community that caters to the bottom denominator of our society. We are the only people that fight and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. You would be hard pressed to find, a Jewish person who has spent 5 stints in prison that Jewish people champion and demand justice for. You will be hard pressed to find this in white America. You'll be hard pressed to find it in Latino America. George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died, but I'm not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer. For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes, and I am not going to play a part in it no matter how much pressure comes from Black liberals and Black conservatives.
I think you pointed out some things that may be factually true, but are beside the point. So to say, for example, that George Floyd had a criminal past, true, right? I don't know whether there's drugs in the system or not. I want to see a little more evidence. But let's say for a moment that the autopsy reports that we say are correct.
Both of them, the private one and the
private and public so far, right?
Yeah.
I don't see an argument for why that should make any difference. Now, you conceded that what the police officer did was wrong, which I appreciated, because if we don't start there, then it's not a good faith argument, right? Then it's like, what are we talking about? The problem is, those things can be used as a distraction from the point that you did touch on, which is that this was wrong and that state violence is wrong, no matter who it's against. And to me, whether he was on drugs, whether he robbed 10 stores, is irrelevant to this particular conversation.
Yeah, no, I think so. For me, I think it's actually very relevant, and not to, I wasn't saying that to overshadow the conversation. I actually didn't think that the conversation was being overshadowed, because it was actually the first time that there was a full consensus, left and right, that this police officer was wrong.
The other thing, though, I think about raising him to the level of hero. First of all, I think whenever someone is eulogized, right, and these were national public eulogies, we don't say, yeah, but. Right, when we eulogize Reagan, right, as a nation, there were many people who chided Black folk, and people on the left for criticizing policy. Say, wait, there's a time for that, but why are we criticizing him now in a time of mourning? Why are we doing this here? Why are we doing this now? So yeah, I don't think at George Floyd's funeral we should be raising his criminal history. But again, I don't see how that's relevant to the issue here. No one was saying that he was a champion of black people his entire life. The point was, regardless of who he is, his life mattered. His life was worthy of protection. And in some ways, I am actually interested to think about what it means for us to fight for someone who wasn't perfect. Because very often we only fight for the middle class, cisgendered, straight, heterosexual guy who's going to college on Monday like Mike Brown, and we have to put Trayvon on a horse to say that he didn't need to die. And it's like, that's not the point. You shouldn't have to be perfect to
Well,
to
I think
live.
it is the point, because, and this is my problem with our community, is that Black Americans are hypocrites. We are hypocrites, right? So you say, oh, well, it's not the point. Well, where were we on the issues of kids getting shot, actual innocent Black victims being killed, every weekend, every day in the inner cities? Nobody cares. If you want to give somebody a funeral and you want to have it be 5 days long, why not do that for Tyshawn Lee, the 9-year-old kid who was wearing his school uniform and playing basketball when he was lured into an alley by, an older Black man who then shot him point blank in the head 2 times because he didn't like his dad. And it was like, it was gang violence. Nobody cared. So this whole idea of there's this uprising because you care about Black lives. Don't pretend you care about Black lives. You like the political expediency of caring about a Black life, if and only when they die at the hands of a police officer, or die at the hands rather of a white person, because it doesn't even have to be a police officer, as long as it's a white person.
Yeah, I don't think the world is looking up to George Floyd. I think they're looking to his death as an example of what's happening to us every single day in societies. And I think that's
It's not happening to us every single day in society.
Oh, it absolutely is.
What is?
Excessive force, police brutality?
Your police are killing Black Americans every day?
No, brutality, excessive force. I'm not talking about death. Brutality, right? That's the point, right? George Floyd was beaten. People are beaten every day. George Floyd was attacked.
Some people are beaten because they are being violent to police officers.
So if you look at the data suggests something different. Blacks and Latinos are 40 to 50% are 40 to 50% more likely to face excessive force. Now, when you get to death, when you get to police shootings, the most accurate and recent data from the studies that are out don't suggest a racial disparity, right? Black people aren't necessarily more likely to be killed by law enforcement every day, on a day-to-day basis. In fact, the numbers are relatively low. But excessive force, absolutely, the data is indisputable.
People that are protesting out today are not protesting because they believe that police officers are using excessive force.
Oh, they are, though.
The whole mainstream narrative, when they're having people on and talk on CNN and Black Lives Matter, their entire platform is about Black men dying unarmed at the hands of police officers. It was founded upon that concept. So I hate the fact that we're now shifting and pretending it's about something else, and we're widening the net, and we're making it about excessive force studies that nobody is talking about on CNN. Everybody is talking specifically about the idea that a Black man that is unarmed is likely to die at the hands of a police officer, and that's fraudulent. It's a lie.
What I gather from you right now, talking to you on this chat, is that you're very intelligent, you're very mild-mannered and good. I can't be angry. I'm not saying I wanted to hate you coming in, because we had conversation. I don't want to hate anybody. But I know there's people that want to hate you, and I think that just from hearing you talk like this, they can't hate you. But my question, and my thing that I was going to ask you was, do you think that it's bad timing? When you say some of these things, George Floyd's body wasn't even cold. Do you feel that some of the things that when you say them, it's bad timing, it's insensitive? Do you think that you could work on some of those things, because maybe the message is getting lost in the lack of sensitivity and timing? Now, could you agree with that?
So, like I said, my dad, that was his thing about the George Floyd thing. He's like, I agree with everything you're saying, but I think your timing is wrong. It's insensitive, like with the death having just happened. And my point is my timing was right, because I knew this death was going to transform into more Black men dying and shit being burned down in our neighborhoods and Black people being set back another 60 years. Right? So there is no right timing when we're being lied to, and there's a deceptive narrative out. The right timing is now. I saw the way people were going to react and were lying and putting all this stuff out. And I said, you know what? I'm going to interject with a whole different narrative here, because I already know where this is going. I've just been speaking about this for 3 years. I've been warning the Black community for 3 years in every speech. At every election cycle, they will focus on one death, okay? Get Black America to act crazy, okay? And then go out and trash their own jobs. I mean, who do you think works at the Target, in the hood? Who do you think, whose neighborhoods? You saw those people crying. My company, we raised $100,000 to give the Black business owners. You know what I mean?
You raised what? Hold on, stop 1 second. Because I need to hear that. What did you just say?
Like Blexit, my company, my minority-owned company, we raised $100,000 to and gifted it to Black businesses that were burned down. You know what I'm saying? The thing is people don't realize how I move. I don't move like while people are busy out here trying to turn George Floyd into a MLK the third. You're right. I'm actually trying to uplift the Black people that were doing the right thing. You know what I'm saying? The people that had businesses. I mean, these people, we called them to give the money, and we did not go on news, talk about it. We didn't want any press about it. We didn't, it wasn't even about that. Crying, like saying, this is all I have in my life. Me and my wife, we pulled together our research. There are Black people that are doing the right thing every day, right? And they're not going to be buried in gold caskets, right? They're not going to, nobody gives a damn that their businesses and everything that they worked for were burned to the ground, right? Because that's it. The media gets us upset, we react, and we pay for the reaction.
Okay,
it's
so
always, it's cyclical.
I want to say two things. Number one, I am in complete lockstep with you when you say that we should not burn our own communities, because that's where we buy our products and that's where we get our services. If you burn that down and you don't have the proper transportation to go somewhere else and get your products and services, you are out of the mix. Also, when you hop into somebody else's community and they don't know you, we now are back to that racism and that, Karen calls on you kind of culture. Let me just say what I gotta say, that a lot of us experience. But here's what I do say that I do disagree with you, because I'm gonna say something to you. I looked at your Instagram, I looked at your Twitter, I researched you. There are things that you say that are absolutely brilliant, but then there are things that I don't agree with. I personally believe, because you just said they're trying to make him Martin Luther King III. People are not trying to make George Floyd Martin Luther King III. People feel like you feel, and I'm just telling you, and you can reply to me, that you and other people think that, he is a martyr for us. And the thing is that I want you to understand that Black people, we didn't make him a martyr. Derek Chauvin made him a martyr. Derek Chauvin made him the face of an entire movement. We didn't do that. Let's just say, here's the thing, because I saw your tweet, and we're going so far all over the place that I'll just talk about stuff when it comes up. You said that he was on fentanyl, and he was, whatever happened, his record and 9 checks. Okay, that may be the case, but none of that had to do with anything that took place on that day. Number two, if he hold on, let me just get it, because I'm going to let you respond, because we have a good back and forth here. Had he been high on fentanyl, all they had to do was put his arms behind his back, throw his punk ass in the back of the car. Listen, I understand y'all might have pulled him out and his head hit the ceiling or whatever. Fine, you throw him in there, you process him, and he'd be coming off of his fentanyl high today. So my thing is, what he did in the past, whether he was an armed robber or he put a gun to somebody's stomach, it didn't have to do with the fact that he got killed summarily by the police. That's the only thing I disagreed with you with. Yes, people could say he was a criminal, people could say he did bad things, but it didn't have anything to do with the day in question. Do you agree or disagree with that? And go on and slide your head.
I must have said 12 times in my video, he did not deserve to die, and I'm happy that Derek Chauvin is paying for that. Pause. That's not even a debate. So even going through that, not necessarily, because I've already agreed with that. I said he should be alive today and should be in prison. Okay, what I'm agreeing with, what I'm disagreeing with.
Why can I not find these things on the internet?
In the same exact video that I watched, I mean the same exact video that I did that went viral, I said that. I started off with that. I said it at least in that video multiple times. I mean, you can go rewatch the video, right? It's just that that's not what the media runs with. So suddenly your memory becomes the headlines, right? And people's tried to make it seem like I said he deserved to die. I'm like, I actually explicitly said, I want to be super clear that in no way am I saying that he deserved to die in that manner and that he should still be alive today, right? And the reason why I said there was no reason to debate that was because everyone agreed with that. There was not a single person in the world that said what Derek Chauvin did was right. There was no defense for it, right? What I am disagreeing with is the idea that this man should be painted in murals, should be called should be called a martyr, should be called a hero, okay? That the woman who had the gun pressed to her stomach should have to watch this bullshit. I am sick of Black America uplifting criminals. I'm just tired of it. You can say this man didn't deserve to die without throwing him a 4-day televised funeral, without asking a vice president to send a video, okay? He traumatized Black American communities throughout his entire life. He never stopped, okay? I do not support George Floyd. I'm not going, and we are the only community that does it. You will not find, you go to find that white guy who spent 9 stints in jail and prison, who white America is and you know more white people are killed by police officers than not. They throw their criminals away. They have no time for Jewish people. Same thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that they would be out there not saying, okay, this little boy didn't deserve to die. They might say that statement. They're not doing what we did. This shit is way too extra. Okay? It's ridiculous. Take your kid out of this George Floyd t-shirt. This is not his idol. We got tons of good people in the Black community. This wasn't one of them. Okay? And that is my thing. And I stand by every single word that I said. Okay? I think he was a horrible human being who did a lot of shitty things to a lot of people throughout his entire life. Okay? You spend your whole life traumatizing the Black community and you want me to be out there crying? No. Okay? Shouldn't happen. Hope Derek Chauvin gets arrested. Oh, he's arrested. Okay, good. Next.
Okay,
that's my reaction.
So, because my thing is that he has become the face of the movement because of what happened. So we're both in agreement that Chauvin should go to jail and he should be prosecuted, correct? Okay.
Everybody agreed with that. Everybody agreed that he had a right to get arrested, and this should, I mean, now, of course, as I said, the details weren't out, in the video. Apparently, they never showed us what the lead up was. George Floyd was saying, "I can't breathe" before he was ever on his neck. He was saying it from the beginning, which is likely a consequence of fentanyl. I mean, fentanyl is 100 times stronger than morphine. So he was likely having some sort of an overdose. And what should have happened in that moment is they should have let him sit down, right? And they should have called for an ambulance. There should have been no knee put on his neck. That's my opinion. I think they made a terrible decision by upping it to second-degree murder because they're not going to be able to prove that. And they should have kept it at manslaughter. But because they always respond to the media and they don't do what's right, it's actually very likely Derek Chauvin's going to get off now because people hyped this to a point that they went for a charge they're not going to be able to prove in the court of law.
Okay, so here's the thing. You say that the man is going to get off, right?
He might, yeah, because the charge.
But how do you get off of something so egregious? We watched this man put
because they did the wrong charge. They did the wrong charge.
For 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
I agree with you. What I'm saying to you, and you go look up conservatives writing this. If you follow this case, the mistake that was made was the DA making the charge second-degree murder. It was the biggest mistake in the whole case. If you wanted to get him, they should have kept it at manslaughter and went for the max sentencing. But they wanted to do the whole, the streets are alive, Black Lives Matter, we're going to go for a charge that you're not going to be able to meet.